Didn't you feel like there should have been another beat there?
I'm so stoned from being in the green room. I was doing, this is so much hipper than anything that I've ever done. By this time of night, I'm usually in bed, so I just got into it. I've been snorting rails of coke off of the drummers. So I didn't even hear it.
Didn't even hear it, yeah. Well, welcome to the show.
That'll be usable radio for you, won't it? Sorry, forgive me.
Yeah, we're just going to start. Well, welcome to the show, David.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's lovely to have you here. We have wanted to have you on the show for so long. We're big fans. I talked at the beginning of the show about Barbara Ehrenreich's book, and there's your book. And do you think that right now we're ushering ourselves into an age of pessimism?
I think if you think about what's going on, I can't imagine we could be in any other kind of age. But then again, I thought that 8 years ago, and I thought that 12 years ago, and I thought that during Reagan, so I'm always wrong. I literally have my finger off the pulse. I never know.
Right. What made you write a book? I mean, you had to research. You did a lot of research for this.
Yes, I did, didn't I? Late nights in the library, different sources.
I believe you went to Utah, didn't you?
I did go to Utah.
That says a lot.
Far afield I went, yes, in my quest for the truth.
Right. What set you off on this idea to write a book about pessimism?
Well, it was twofold. One was my editor at Doubleday very cleverly pointed out that I seemed to have trouble accessing pleasure. And so he thought that that might be a good filter through which to do the next book. You know, my essential, not even capacity to experience joy, but some reluctance to wholeheartedly jump into it.
Right.
Except for tonight.
Of course. Right. Which we really appreciate that you jumped right in with the band. So one of the ideas in the book that you discuss is called defensive pessimism.
Yes.
Can you explain how that works?
Well, it's not my term. And in fact, I don't even know if it's the term of Julie Norm, who's a psychologist who I went to interview that unleashed, was the diving board for the whole book. Defensive pessimism is a kind of anxiety management technique. It's like all pessimism in that it begins with the presentiment of desire, this will be a disaster. My dance recital will suck so bad.
Right.
Barry Manilow will record, she ruined my song.
Right.
Yes. That's the presentiment of disaster that all pessimists feel. Defensive pessimists differ from other pessimists in that where a mentally ill pessimist would use that as a pretext to go to bed, the defensive pessimist views the worst case scenario the worst that they could possibly make up, and they go through it detail by detail, and you oppose it, one little niggling detail at a time.
Rationally, and you prepare for things that might go wrong as well.
So in fact, as you said, you had zero expectation. I think that's irresponsible. I actually think dread. You brought yourself
dread
to zero.
Dread is responsible, right.
I would go to -3 to -5.
Right.
And that way, you're literally almost never disappointed. Although, I have to say, I've been disappointed recently.
In what? Can you talk about an instance?
No, it's personal.
Oh, okay.
But
now, in talking to all of these experts, where did you find yourself? Did you go into it thinking maybe I'm clinically depressed in some way, or maybe I
knew that I was a defensive pessimist, and indeed I was assigned the initial story for the New York Times Magazine precisely because of a kind of despairing quality to my writing. That's why they sent me, obviously. I thought, though, that I was a little sadder than I actually am. I could not tease apart the strands of anxiety and sadness. So when I started that piece, which is the first chapter, it took me 9 years to write because I could not find my way through that. It turns out you can be completely anxious and completely happy, which I'm very happy to say I'm not as sad as I thought I was. I'm just anxious.
Right. Yeah, and anxious makes you feel horrible. And it puts an ugly filter on the world.
It keeps you a nice person. If that's what it takes to be a mensch, then be as anxious as you want. That's the thing. It's like, I hate to say it, but I don't think Dick Cheney feels a lot of anxiety.
I would agree with that.
So, the head that lies happy on the pillow is not one you really want to be that close to.
Right. Well, but I think that it comes back to the point that you made at the very beginning. If you're actually thinking about things, you're going to be upset.
Yes, unless you're on the board of Halliburton. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
How could you be anything but that? But again, I've been wrong. I mean, I was wrong in 1982 when I was a freshman in college. I never, as I said, I would be in bed by now. But in freshman year in college, I thought, you're in New York, do something. So I went to Danceteria, which is a club. And, I just hated it from the beginning. It was noisy and loud, and the bathroom line was long. And there was some chick who was performing that night on a stage the size of this, And she stunk. And I just thought, you stink. And I couldn't wait to go to bed and just consign her to the dustbin of history. And it was Madonna.
Right.
So, and then, I'm not... I'm a gay guy. I learned to love Madonna, obviously, but she was bad that night. So I have a negative capacity to predict trends.
Sure.
I wouldn't bet on me, is what I'm saying.
In some ways, right.
In any way.
I'm wondering if you can give us a little taste of the book, a little reading.
Sure, absolutely. This is from the middle of the book, where I took 3 trips in an effort to prove that I was not immune to pleasure. And I'm not immune to pleasure. But this is from when I went to Utah. I have come to Promontory Point, home of the Golden Spike Historical Site, which is about 100 miles northwest of Salt Lake City. It was there on May 10th, 1867, that the tracks of the Central Pacific met those of the Union Pacific and were joined to form the first transcontinental rail system. It can be hard to fathom that I am at one of the most important places in the United States, but it was here at the Golden Spike that the country turned into, well, a country. The effect was felt almost immediately. This is not metaphoric. The Pony Express ceased operations literally 2 days later. You can tap, 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 mother ill, come soonest, stop all you like, but if you're relying upon the stagecoach to get you to the deathbed in question, I'm afraid I have some bad news. With the railroads, the trickle of settlers coming by wagon train was suddenly upgraded to a flood of terrifyingly efficient westward expansion. Manifest destiny transformed from the merely notional into reality at a speed never known theretofore. Don't believe me? Just ask the Indians. Scrub plain stretches in all directions to the swayed brown hills in the distance. Even seen from above, the satellite images on Google Earth reveal an expanse as beige and unvaried as a slice of bologna. F. Scott Fitzgerald stopped far too soon when he wrote about the fresh green breast of the New World, affectionately known as Long Island, that bloomed before Dutch sailors' eyes as being the last time mankind came face to face with something commensurate with his capacity for wonder. It turns out there was a whole continent beyond the eastern seaboard to slake the thirst of those seeking such adventure. Standing at the squat commemorative obelisk, I try to conjure the mindset that beheld this vast, sere pan of brown dirt, with the bare foothills rising in the distance and the far more forbidding gray snow-capped mountains rising farther beyond, all of it under a sky whose unbounded immensity proclaims my insignificance with an irrefutable and terrifying truth. But I cannot do it. How does one take all of this in and still think, yes, I will go ever gaily forward. I will endure a pre-industrialized trek over hundreds of miles on a rocking, hard-slatted wagon bench, or in a saddle, or on foot. I will leave my children behind, or I will bring them along, and then watch them succumb to scarlet fever, rickets, or infection. On those very special occasions when I do wipe my ass, it will be with dry, sharp-edged leaves. One night I will have an abscessed molar extracted by some half-blind chuck-wagon drunkard wielding a pair of rusty pliers, and I will employ my own just-past Neolithic tools to make this railroad, this house, this town, and one fine day with my remaining teeth I will have to bite down on a leather strap while they amputate my gangrenous leg without the benefit of anesthetic, and then I will hobble 22 miles on foot, 1 foot, so that I might then climb a scaffold back in town in order to carve a tribute to his glory into the unyielding granite escutcheon of a cathedral. How did they do it? The monks and the abbots who hauled the rocks to build their monasteries on craggy Himalayan peaks and kept at it until the job was done. Ditto, the conquistadors who, even fueled with the promise of gold, saw those jagged stratospheric peaks of the Andes and didn't just say, oh, f*** this, I'm going back to Spain. It seemed frankly remarkable that anyone, anywhere, ever attempted anything.
David Rakoff. I think that it's obvious to me you can find joy in anything. Even Utah. Clearly. Before you go, I did want to ask you about, are you familiar with Dan Savage's It Gets Better campaign?
Yes.
In the book, you talk a little bit about your high school experiences, and I'm just wondering, certainly a campaign entitled It Gets Better may go against your belief system, but do you feel like a campaign like that, where people that you look up to told you that things would get better, do you think that might have helped you back then?
Yes, I wonder if I could have heard it. I love the campaign that they do, and I think it's really beautiful, and I saw their video, and I absolutely cried. But I don't know that I could have heard it at the time. But I don't also equate my narcissistic melancholia with anything like the danger that these kids are in. I lived in a big city, I come from a liberal family. It was easy to be faggy where I was. It just was. You know what I mean? I'm not in danger. I wasn't in danger in that way.
Yeah, but do you think that as a defensive pessimist, do you think that promising these kids that things will improve, is that a good thing to do?
Yes, absolutely. It really does improve. I mean, getting older was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah, if high school is good, you can pretty much guarantee someone that it's going to get worse. You know, those people for whom high school is great.
Isn't it interesting to see the people who peaked?
Yeah.
And now, that's why they've never called me back.
I wanted to ask you briefly, you talk about secrets in the book and how your mother was a psychiatrist, your father was a psychotherapist, so you were taught to be very discreet, and you are a very good listener. What do you think about what's happening right now with the Moth and storytelling series, and how forthcoming we've become as a culture?
I'm not comfortable with it, which is an obviously strange position considering that I write somewhat personal essays.
Right.
But I keep my life very inviolate. I'm not very comfortable with a lot of disclosure. There are a lot of storytelling series in New York City going on right now that are just sort of like, basically, come and tell us the worst thing that ever happened to you. Or, it's a new storytelling series, Unindicted Crimes. And it's like, why would I tell you about a crime that I committed?
Right.
I don't want to go to jail. It's the same thing. It's like, here's the thing, horrible cringing. It's like, well, if I'm cringing horribly, I'll keep it to myself and eat secretly at home. It's just while crying. But I'm not super comfortable with the level of disclosure. I think that, we're going to rue and there will be a market correction and people will just sort of keep it to themselves a little bit. And I welcome those days when I will have no career.
Exactly. Well, we won't welcome it. The book is half empty. It's a wonderful book. Highly recommended. There is a warning on the front. No inspirational life lessons will be found in these pages. David Rakoff, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
You've been listening to a snippet of Livewire, the radio variety show that's like a chew toy for your brain. For more information about the show or to download our podcast, visit livewireradio.org.